Tanner Bibee, Logan Allen, Taj Bradley all fetched really big bids in fab bidding in our fab leagues in the last few weeks. We got a couple more young minor league starters making their debuts this week. Are we spending too much on those pitchers, or is that the new way to go? Fred and I will discuss that among more on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Jeff Erickson here with Fred Zinkie. We are happy to be broadcasting a little low definition sound today. I apologize about that. Somehow got to get my sound system working right again, but don't worry, it's a temporary blip on the radar there. As always, our podcasts are brought to you by the good folks at Rival Fantasy. Thanks for them for joining us today. Fred, how are you?
I'm great, Jeff. How are you? Ready to talk some baseball?
I am. I missed baseball over the weekend. Didn't get to do the pod with Scott. Didn't get to watch nearly as much baseball. Was at my with my parents most of the weekend, and either at their apartment or at the hotel. Didn't have my usual options for watching baseball that I usually do. So happy to get back into it. Have a normal day today. Nothing normal about this season. No season is normal. They're all weird. They're all crazy. But this year it's pitching for me. It's finding enough of it. Finding good pitching and being able to buy good young pitchers. We saw this was Tanner Bibee and Logan Allen weekend. We've had Taj Bradley weekend. Got some other big prospect starters in Bryce Miller and Gavin Stone making their debuts this week. Probably we'll see how they do, but probably could be some more big bids this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll see. Stone could be back in the minors, I guess, before the weekend, right. In which case, he could be up and down in a day, in which case there won't be bidding on him this weekend. And Miller, we'll see what happens later tonight. Probably by the time a lot of people listen to this, they'll have already seen his initial start. So, but there could be big bids this weekend. And this has really got me thinking, like the Bibee bids last weekend, the Logan Allen bids for sure as well, maybe to a lesser degree, but the Taj Bradley bids previously. I think we've hit a new stratosphere in young SP prospect bidding that we didn't see a few years ago. And I don't know how I feel about it. I don't think I'm necessarily against it, but I think it's worth discussing because we're seeing $300 bids on Tanner Bibee, and we don't even know for sure that he'll be able to stay in the Guardians rotation for the rest of the season when everyone's healthy. He could be pitching well, but if he's not pitching incredibly well, he could end up back in the minors. Even if he's pitching incredibly well, he could still end up back in the minors, the way some teams work with their young starters. We saw that with Bradley. So I guess this is our new reality. And how do we feel about it?
Yeah. And I in previous iterations, I got one share of Taj Bradley in AL Tout Wars. Got that win, and then saw him got sent back down. And I'm holding him. I'm waiting, but in an AL only league, it's probably worth it to capture the upside. But at the same time, it's tough. It's tough because now I have to go, fill in again. And the thing is, I'm finding and I cut Bailey Ober, by the way, in part to go get that. To go get him. And maybe it was for another player, I forget which, but I lost out on Ober this past week, and I'd rather have Ober. Ober, at least I have with the injury to Tyler Mahle, he's going to be out for a while. I was listening to Scott and Ryan Bloomfield. Thanks to Ryan for covering for me on Sunday, improving over me, as the case may be. Mahle's going to be out for a while. So Ober should be in for at least a couple of months. We don't know that to be the case with these prospects as much. The Guardians at the time of our recording are 14-15. Did have a comeback win over the Yankees last night. That's a good win for them. Clay Holmes blew the save, got a vote of confidence. We'll talk about that more later on. But we don't know if he's going to stick around. I think he should. I mean, Zach Plesac, Cal Quantrill shouldn't stand in the way of Bibee if he's pitching well, even when they get like Tristan McKenzie back at the end of the month. But we know at least Bibee's got like a month to prove himself. He's got a chance to earn that spot. And force the Guardians to make its tough decision. But what if the Guardians are hovering around 500 still? Maybe given how they came on strong last year, they'd probably be patient and hang on, but they could mess around with service time still.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And Yeah, and like sometimes I say that these things have a way. I often say this, that they have a way of working themselves out. By the time we get all the way back to Tristan McKenzie being back, some maybe Quantrill will be hurt or something like that. You did say Quantrill shouldn't block Bibee, which I kind of agree with. At the same time, Quantrill's been a starter, for Cleveland for a while. His career ERA is 3.61. I know that a lot of the metrics say he's been lucky throughout his career, but he's thrown 500 innings at a 3.61 ERA. I'm not saying he's as good as Bibee, but he is probably someone that a major league team, at least for now, we'll see how the next few weeks go, wants to have in their rotation.
Okay, so please
this is just me sticking up for the Canadian at this point. But anyways, one of my thoughts was, okay, let's say that Cleveland brought Bibee up and said he will be in our rotation for the remainder of the season. How much more would he go for? Like, was there any discount on the uncertainty? Because
no,
Bradley,
it was not.
I don't think there was. I think so. Even if Cleveland brought him up and said this guy's in our rotation for the rest of the season, so now at that point you're just bidding on skills and whether he's really good or not. I don't know how much more than 300 he would have gone for.
I got to tell you, I find myself continually out of step on this bidding on these young pitchers in the main and even in the online championship where the bidding is usually a little lower. I found myself behind. I don't know how I feel about that. Maybe because for all the risk factors I identified. All that said, I went through all my, all my NFBC universe bids and then found myself reacting and raising those bids for later leagues like Labor and in the FSGA league that I'm in, where I got Bibee in both of those. In FSGA, I mean, it was weird that there are only 4 teams that bid on him. But in Labor, there was 11 out of the 15 teams put in bids on him. We get to see that. We don't get to see what the individual bids were from each team, but we do see the numbers from the other 10 teams. So I bid 23 out of 100 with, keep in mind, it's less granular than it is the NFBC. So 23% there means more than it does in the NFBC. And there's no $0 bids. There's no trading of fab dollars. It's pretty strict. Once you're out, you're out. So that was a pretty sizable bid. There's a couple of 19s in there. Point is, there was a lot of healthy bids. I know Zach Steinhorn didn't bid on him. He said in his newsletter that he's happy with his pitching, so he didn't want to jump in on the bidding, knowing that he wasn't going to get him anyhow. What did you think about that? Now, I'll tell you a little bit more about my circumstances, but where were you on Bibee and Labor?
Labor, I didn't spend as much because I had already spent a fair amount. And like you said, it's just a really unforgiving system, the $100 with no $0 bids. So I think I had already spent about $30 going into this week. So I think I bid maybe like 13 or 14 or something like that. And my pitching's gone okay. I just lost DeGrom, so that's a big deal. We'll see how long he's out for. But so far it's gone okay. And I felt better about my pitching than my hitting. So I bid, like I said, about 13 or 14, which I think 13 in Labor does not equate to 130 in NFBC because of the no $0 bids and the $1 increments. I think 13 in Labor probably accounts for I'd say 170, 180 in the NFBC. So anyway, so that was about as much as I felt comfortable bidding. With Bibee going for so much in all these leagues, that's interesting. Like your point on Zach, like you have to assume everybody wants him. But some teams in certain leagues, and every league, some teams will say, my pitching's pretty good. Like I'm high in ERA, I'm doing well in ERA, I'm doing well in WHIP. My starters are in pretty good shape, so I'm not going to break the bank on a young starter. So it's not like you have all 15 teams going hard after him. But starting pitching is at enough of a deficit right now where I'd say most of the teams in your league, these are prices that we used to only see for closers. Or maybe like a really, really high-end hitting prospect who's like up and up, definitely, up for good. We didn't see these prices for starting pitchers. I wonder if it's just an extension of like in the main event, we used to see starting pitchers pitch later than they are now. And the draft cost of starting pitchers started creeping up and up and up in the main event. And a lot of people said these pitchers are going too early. But then the alternative was, well, if you don't get on this train, what are you going to do? You're going to be stubborn about it. And all of a sudden you don't have any pitchers, right?
Yeah. What are you going to say? Well, I'll just pick up Michael Kopech in a 7 ERA instead.
Right. So, all these pitchers went too early in the main event. So I just waited until round 8, and then I started taking starting pitchers, and my ace is, and it's someone who's not very good. And so it's like you had to kind of get with the program, even if you didn't love it.
Mhm.
I wonder if it's the same. There has to be a trade-off. So I wonder if it's the same thing with Fab starting pitchers. Like, okay, if you want to stay out of this, you can stay out of this, but you're not getting any of the young elite prospects that are brought up in the first couple months of the season. So you can go away from that. I mean, there is a finite amount of money in the Fab pool, so maybe this means there'll be better deals on hitters. I don't know, but it's the same as drafts. Like there has to be a trade off somewhere. If Bibee and Bradley and these guys are going for an extra $150, there has to be a trade off somewhere where other players have to go for less.
Yep. Yep. There is. And it might come later in the season, where a lot of the budgets are expended a little bit there. And then you start picking off other guys. There's always more. I mean, it's pitching prospects, right? I mean, we've seen it in the comments. Joel Whaley's waiting for Brandon Pfaadt, or Wiley, excuse me. Joel, apologize. I'm butchering your name. Joseph Nelson. Wish the Cardinals would call it Matthew Liberatore. I was talking about that with James Anderson today. I mean, they're rolling out Woodford. I think he just got demoted out of the rotation with Adam Wainwright coming back. But the Cardinals, I mean, are in a terrible way right now. The White Sox are in a terrible way. We'll see other teams that are going to call some pitchers up. We're going to talk about the Astros in a minute there. Do they turn to Forrest Whitley? Probably not, because he's not pitching all that well right now. But it's the PCL, so who knows? We're getting these waves of pitching prospects, and it's great. I mean, we're getting those guys, more pitching prospects than hitting prospects this year, getting called up.
Yeah, and I wonder if the high prices, especially in the 15-team leagues, is just a sign that we can't find pitching on waivers very well. Like, it's really hard to find. Back in the day, it was easier to find like a streaming starting pitcher off waivers. I'm talking 10 years ago, et cetera, 15 years ago. So again, I think this is the same as the earlier prices in the drafts. Like, now managers are saying, like, I can't find streamers. I need to pay the premium for someone who I may be able to just put in my lineup and forget. And that hasn't been the case so far with Bradley. It doesn't mean Bradley won't be back up in a week or two and then stay up for a really long time. We don't know. But it's interesting that these guys are getting these massive bids, and we don't even know if they're going to stay in the rotation. This isn't like when Brett Baty came up. So, for example, Brett Baty, who I know wasn't available in a lot of leagues, I think when he came up, whether the Mets expressly said this or not, like he's up. If he hits, he's up for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm saying, well, I don't know. Maybe Brett Baty can be more valuable than Tanner Bibee, but like, we don't have the same assurance with these starting pitchers like we do have with Brett Baty. So, and I would say that if Brett Baty was available in every league this past Sunday, let's say he'd been called up this past Sunday, I think Bibee would have gone for more.
Probably, the certain organizations you trust a little bit more than others too, as far as keeping those guys up. Mm-hmm. Tampa Bay, the trust level is obviously very low. Mm-hmm. Where they had a need and they came up with the we got to get them on a 5-day rotation instead of a 6-day rotation excuse that nobody's buying. And that, which kind of raises the question though, why did they call them up in the first place? Which probably indicate, probably is like they maybe they believe that's a thing. Maybe it's true. I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting to see that there, but if Bryce Miller dominates this week, will I be back at it again this weekend? Who knows? There's a long-term opportunity there. Robbie Ray's out for the year.
Yeah, I don't see Miller yet as like a prospect on the level of readiness of someone like Bibee. So I don't think I will bid as much, like, unless he's just lights out, but I don't see myself bidding as much on him. But the not as much that I'm willing to bid probably won't be enough. If he has a quality start, he's going to go for triple digits. That just seems to be where we're going with this. And I'm interested to see if it'll run out at some point, if the people who are willing to pay $300 for a starting pitcher prospect eventually don't have the money to continue doing that. And then the rest of the people in the league who aren't willing to pay that much, so then the price goes down. But I don't think that's going to necessarily happen. I think that it's like when you're in an auction and you're like, oh, there's only one good outfielder left. Like, that guy goes for more, right? Yeah. So I could see the prices staying up because I could see the people who wanted Bradley and missed out, then wanted Logan Allen or Bibee and missed out. Now, if they get a chance at Pfaadt or Miller or Liberatore, then they're like, oh, I got to get one of them. I kept missing out. I got to keep my bids high. I got to get one of them. So,
Yeah.
I don't see the prices going down.
No, I don't either. I don't know if I see myself, bidding that high in him. I was looking at Miller's stat line. I mean, it's dangerous to stat line scout, but he had a big ERA in Double-A, 5 homers and 4 starts will lead to that. But he also had an 18 to 3K to walk, and that was something that you kind of like. Okay, yeah, I'm interested again. He can miss bats, and obviously has the prospect pedigree. I just think he might struggle initially. We'll see. But at the same time, I'm desperate to, I have a lot of leagues where I'm just like, hey, my pitching's terrible. I'm, even when I get Chris Bassett's come around a little bit, but then like he pitched Sunday, didn't pitch, he had a horrible first inning in that game. And, that'll be the gift that keeps on giving. I keep getting those sort of outings.
Yeah. And I think that's also driving up the price on these young starters is for every blow up, there's a little bit more panic. And when there's a little bit more panic from the manager, then it's like, who might be able to solve my problem? Taj Bradley, Tanner Bibee. Yeah. Every blow up that we got in April, I think just pushes the price up a little bit because we overreact to things, right? So I think that's part of it too. The fact that less people probably feel comfortable with their entire starting pitching. It's just like how we say that major league teams, like almost every major league team could use a starter. I think almost every fantasy team could use another good starter right now.
Yeah.
So it's just how much is that worth?
Yeah. So we're seeing news. Brandon Pfaadt will be up tomorrow. I'm trying to find a source on that one here, but thanks. I saw that in the comments.
It looks like I haven't seen it like official, but I am seeing it where people are reporting that, this is happening.
Yeah.
So
that would be pretty big.
Yeah, big bid.
And the Diamondbacks clearly have the opening. I mean, they're basically a two-man rotation right now. And then they're trying to figure the rest of it out. Pfaadt's really good. I mean, again, PCL stat line scouting is dangerous because of those ballparks. Reno in particular is hideous. So it's something to watch for there. But you know what? I would think that he's another one, and we're gonna have some pretty spirited bidding in the NFBC again this weekend because Pfaadt, you would think that this promotion is going to be full time and permanent.
I could make an argument that Pfaadt's worth the most of all of them because the best ability is availability, as the saying goes, and Pfaadt seems like the one who's most likely to be available to you for the rest of the season, right? Because Cleveland has good starters or reasonable starters on the IL. Tampa manages to come up with pitching from all sorts of places at all sorts of times. The Diamondbacks, as you said, are floating in and around 500. Yep, maybe able to sit in the wild card race, and they're the team that really needs the rotation help the most. So the Diamondbacks need Pfaadt. I think if Pfaadt doesn't fall flat on his face, that was a lot of F's in one sentence. If Pfaadt doesn't fall flat on his face, I think that he could be with them for the rest of the season. So I could argue that he's the one who should be worth the most. Now, I don't know if he'll go for the most because again, those other guys have gone for a lot. That's a lot to break the bank on, but if he has a solid start tomorrow, he's going for a lot.
Yeah. And impressive that you didn't get sick the FCC on us for that. Yeah. That whole segment there you gave a lot of F's and they are all the right ones.
A lot of F-bombs all in one sentence.
So very good. Very good. It helps that Pfaadt missed out on a Coors Field series.
Yep.
I mean, that's pretty handy. He's missed out on 2 Dodger series. So that's pretty good right then and there. That he's going to be stepping into a better situation. Diamondbacks are 16-13 right now, if I recall correctly. Not much of a run differential, but they had the profile of a good young core. Maybe not on the pitching side, but young hitters. We always like seeing that. Like they kind of hit their stride sometimes at the same time. They kind of feed off each other almost. So that's something I'm going to be watching for a little bit there. I've got Pfaadt. I held on to him in labor as well as held on to Bailey Ober. I had all these injuries and found like the pickups wanting. And that's one of the things that the stringent labor rules are, like you can't just stream guys as easily. You kind of need to hold if you believe in the talent. So hopefully that helps. I don't know. I might be able to get Pfaadt in there because Arizona didn't play yesterday,
You're
right?
right. Yes. Arizona, I believe, did not play yesterday. You should be able to get Pfaadt in as long as you have someone in your lineup whose team also did not play yesterday who you're
Right.
willing to take out. So, yeah, you should be able to make that move. And a lot of people listening who maybe have Pfaadt in an NFBC league could also try to make that move. I mean, yeah, like I said, you have to have a pitcher who's not an ace, not a closer, etc., where you're willing to take him out. But yeah, anyways, I think Pfaadt, yeah, he's gonna go unless he stinks tomorrow. I mean, like he'd have to stink 5 innings, 5 runs, something like that. If he's even 5 innings, 3 runs, I think he goes for a lot. So I
Yeah.
mean, we'll also gauge Arizona's comments from the front office. Is he up to stay? Things like that. But he seems to maybe have a better chance than the other pitchers to just come up and stay up.
So I just benched Daniel Bard to make room for Pfaadt. So
Perfect.
expect Colorado to get 3 saves this week. Just so you know, just to warn everybody. But and just tying this all back into a bow. I mean, that's why I went so big on Bibee is because like I was out without Gonsolin most of the year. I've been without Verlander. I lost Springs. I need help. I traded away. That was a league where I could make trades. So I traded away. What's his name from the White Sox? In the Mateo trade, Giolito. So, I need some upside at starting pitcher. Now you don't get much more upside than Bibee. So that's why I was a little bit more aggressive in that league. Whereas in other leagues, I might have been a little bit more circumspect. I'm dragging the anchor of this league too. I mean, it's a bad team. It's a bad roster. I need to take some chances.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. I also think when we're thinking, you're trying to fix a pitching staff. We just talked about how streaming starting pitchers is really, really hard now compared to what it was a few years ago. On the
Yeah.
flip side, the universal DH and the uptick in offense overall arguably makes it just a little bit easier to find a hitter on the waiver wire who you can get for $5 on
Right.
an NFBC league or $1 in labor every Sunday, who is going to get 20 at bats the next week and isn't good, but is okay. Jesus Aguilar, players like that, just someone who can go out there, like I said, play pretty much every day the next week and might be able to hit a home run or do something. That might be easier to find now with the universal DH than finding the starting pitcher who you feel like could give you a quality start. So I could see the rationale behind just spending heavy on maybe a set and forget pitcher and say to yourself, like, you know what, I'm going to try to grind out plate appearances here for my offense on the cheap.
Yeah.
That's
And
going to be my
sometimes you
plan.
end up with Brent Rooker when you do that too.
That's
So it
right.
can work out.
That's right. So to say, maybe I'm going to shift so we always talk about draft. One thing that we don't talk about much during the season, or at least I never hear people talk about, during draft season, we talk a lot about the percentage of your budget used on hitters and starting pitchers and closers on draft day, right? So people will say like, oh, this person used 67% on hitting and 33% on pitching. And we've even found ways to factor that out in a draft, a snake draft, where people I know can translate it and be like, okay, based on your picks, you used roughly 65% of your draft day value on hitters. And we don't really do that as much during the season, where we track back and say, Jeff used out of his $1,000 522 on hitting, 275 on starting pitching, whatever is left over. I'm not going to bother doing the math in my head right now as I'm making up numbers on relief pitching. We don't really do that, but I wonder if maybe that overall $1,000 expenditure is shifting towards starting pitching. It might even be shifting away from closing a little bit, because I find we're not seeing as many of this closer's hurt now, this guy's the closer, everybody go bid $300 on him. I'm not seeing that
I'd
as much.
agree. And I want to hit that in full a little bit there, but I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to make a joke. Jeff spent 37% of his budget chasing closers all season and got 7 saves for it there. So you can get that too. And I think a lot of that depends on how you build your draft too, right? I mean, if you spend a little bit more on starting pitching or, early draft picks on starting pitching, perhaps you spent less on streaming in season. I think there's something to be said for that. One last Pfaadt related comment. Joel Hennard has a question. Start Pfaadt versus Texas or Keller versus Oakland this week. He can still make the change because those pitchers haven't pitched this, or those teams haven't played this week.
Pfaadt. I'll go Pfaadt. I usually like to start pretty much everyone against Oakland, but I'm not into Keller. I'll go Pfaadt just even for the excitement and the fun of it all. Texas's lineup is okay, but it doesn't scare me, especially with Corey Seager out. So I'll take Pfaadt. One thing I'm definitely doing is starting hitters against Oakland. Oakland has had some
Oh
decent.
yeah.
Oakland, your pitcher against Oakland, like Keller has a good chance to get a win when he plays Oakland. But Oakland's offense is like, I don't know, they're like 8th last or something like that in OPS. Like they haven't been the total worst. So like the Tigers may be a better streaming target, for example, for your pitchers than Oakland. Oakland's a better streaming target for streaming hitters.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
Oakland's still a good streaming target for pitchers, but I'll take Pfaadt just for the fun of it. Even if it's
Yeah.
close, I think this week, if it's close between two pitchers, play Pfaadt. You've been holding them, go for it.
And we forgot to include Mason Miller among the young
Yep.
Studley pitchers getting called up. Evan asked if we should start Mason Miller against Seattle tonight. Yeah, I would. I mean, you spent enough to go get him. Seattle doesn't strike me as a must not start against team, so I'm going to go ahead and say yes.
Yeah, I'm fine with that too. I guess league size a little bit and everything, and what your other options are. If it's like a Yahoo type daily type league where you can either use them or not use them, then I'll use them.
Yeah, and if it's a weekly league that's of any 10 teams or greater, I would start them too. Chances are you spend a decent amount of your fab budget on them, unless you're just like straight up waivers. Yeah, I'd use Mason Miller.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna talk hitters because we always wait on the hitters to the end. We run out of time, so we're gonna do hitters next. But before we do that, have some business to attend to. So first, from our friends at Rival Fantasy, a new MLB season means it's time for a new kind of daily fantasy baseball. Rival Fantasy is the fantasy platform reinventing the way daily and weekly games are played, and they brought new games to the ballpark this year that fantasy players won't find anywhere else. Rival Fantasy's games include Fantasy Bingo, head-to-head player challenges, and Fantasy Book, where users can select over-unders for 2 to 5 players. With games like this, daily fantasy has never been better. Right now, RotoWire listeners can get a $50 protected first play. That means if you win your first play, you get keep your winnings. But if you lose your first entry, Rival Fantasy will fully refund you up to $50. Go to play.rivalfantasy.com/signup and use code RotoWireMLB at signup and deposit a minimum of $25 to get your first entry on Rival protected up to $50. Now's the time to step up to the plate and become a Rival today. Welcome to the arena. Also, we host all of our podcasts on the Blue Wire Network, which we love. Here are a couple of their ads. All right. Thanks for your indulgence on that. Let us switch gears, talk a little hitters. I want to start off with the Mets. Brett Baty homered off for lefty in the second game of the doubleheader yesterday, or in the first game of the doubleheader yesterday. And then was played both ends. He's still batting 8th in the lineup, but this guy can flat out play.
Yeah, I agree. I think so too. I think he'll move up in the lineup over the course of the season. There'll just be injuries and he'll get other opportunities. I mean, he's got a 440 BABIP so far. So obviously the 333 average isn't totally legit, but he struck out a little bit, like 12 times in 42 plate appearances. Anyways, he can have some regression and he'd still be a major league quality player. I can see they have a good deep lineup. So bringing him along slowly, I think is fine. I think he's going to be a good fantasy asset going forward, but not like a league winner. Not like he doesn't really steal bases. His batting average will probably come down. Maybe like 270 or something like that. I think he'll be good, usable in a 15-team league almost every week. Just set and forget. In a 12, probably usable most of the time. Him getting a homer off a lefty is a big deal because we just need to keep him in the lineup in those situations. So yeah, I think he's going to be good, not a true difference maker.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I want the Mets to stop protecting him. I want him just to play.
Yep.
I just get him in the lineup on a regular basis. He's 11 plate appearances against lefties now, 31 against righties. He needs to play every day, and he needs to creep up higher in the lineup there. I understand at the Mets it can be a little harder, but still, I think they need to find a way. I think they need to play Francisco Alvarez a little bit more. He played the second game of the doubleheader. We have, I believe, we've got that glorious catcher eligibility now. 14 games at catcher this year. So in almost every league, that should be where he's eligible now. He hasn't been tearing it up yet. Alvarez hasn't been great. In fact, some warnings, maybe not move him up a little bit too fast here. 14 Ks, 1 walk for Alvarez. Only 1 homer, 569 OPS. He still has some work left to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I even worry if he doesn't pick it up that eventually he could go back down in the minors. Not for a while. Maybe when Omar Narvaez is eventually ready to come back. But yeah, for people who spent a lot on Alvarez, who again he didn't net the big bids that these pitchers did, but in some leagues he went for $100 plus. So those were pretty big bids. You haven't got much out of him so far. He has been trending up a little bit the last few days, both in terms of playing time and results, but not a ton. Yeah, I think that definitely if you spend 100 plus on Alvarez, like I guess you're still using him, but you haven't got anything from it yet.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's dangerous still. Yeah, but I think that the Mets, they kind of got off to that uncertain start.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's a bad start.
No.
They're missing so many key players, especially
Yep.
key pitchers. I'd be patient if you're a Mets fan, but I think that's going to be, I think they're going to be on the upswing eventually here. Question: Bryce Harper returns tonight against the Dodgers. Do you put him in your lineup this week? I only have him in one league. It's a keeper league. Yes, absolutely. I'm putting him in the lineup. I may not get stolen bases right away. May struggle a little bit, but honestly, I mean, you carried him all this time. Get him in there. What if he does go off right away?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm only in 15s this year, so in a 15, I think it's a no-brainer. Like you've got to have someone bad enough that you'd want to sit them for Bryce Harper. In a 12, I guess it's maybe a little more of a decision, but same kind of theory. I think if you can't find some way to put Bryce Harper in your lineup, I think things have gone really well for you so far.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, XFL. I got him back this week. I like that. I'm eventually going to get first base eligibility out of him, not just DH too.
Yeah, that's right. That's going to be like a little bit of a bonus at some point. And, first base isn't shallow or anything this year, but third is. So corner infield spots, you could need someone.
Yeah.
And just the flexibility. Infield, outfield flexibility is like my favorite. Like anyone who has some infield position and outfield, I find really valuable throughout the season. So I have no shares of Harper. And obviously at this point, I'm not going to. So, but I still,
Would you trade for him?
My guess is he's not going to be very trade forable, which I know isn't a word, but he's not going to be very trade forable because the person who's holding him is probably like super excited. The person who's holding him took him with the thought that he was going to miss 2 months. Now he's only missed one. I feel like they'll be excited to get him back. Like I think he's only someone you could trade for if he gets off to a really slow start. Maybe you can buy low on him, sell the idea that he's not really healthy.
Right.
At that point, I don't know if you want to trade for him.
Yeah.
Because maybe he is not really healthy.
I agree with you on that. Houston Astros. We talked about Jose Abreu in the past. He's still struggling. His OPS is in the 5s still. Still hasn't homered. He did have 2 RBI yesterday, but just doesn't look good at all up there.
Absolutely. And yeah, we talked about him a couple weeks ago, and you start to worry at this point. Yeah, 27 strikeouts to 4 walks, which is not normal for him. Like this isn't a Javier Baez where you're like, he's always been like that. Doesn't really look like him. You worry about at his age that, he's 36. You worry that maybe he's kind of hit the wall. His BABIP's not even low this year. So it's not like he's been like super unlucky. I don't know if this doesn't turn around, at least I think people in 12s are already thinking about whether they should keep rostering him. Do you think I'm right on that? Or do you think in 12s that hasn't crossed people's minds yet?
I don't think it's crossed people's mind because it's a top 10 rounds pick.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably a league out there where someone's cut him.
Yeah, it's coming in the next month. Like,
in
so
fact,
all of
confirmation of that. A Heart Foundation dropped Abreu for Carlos Santana yesterday. I don't know if I'd go that far, but I see it. I understand why someone would do that. I'm not confident that Abreu turns it around.
No. So dropping Abreu for Carlos Santana is one of those moves where you didn't really drop Abreu for Carlos Santana. You dropped Abreu to get away from Abreu and start.
You dropped him out of spite.
You dropped him to start streaming the spot. And then hopefully eventually you find someone better. So basically you're saying, I think I can do better on the waiver wire long-term than I can do from Abreu. But to start that process, I need to drop Abreu. So I'm going to drop him. I'm going to use Carlos Santana for this week. And, then I'll go from there and see if I want to use Carlos Santana the next week, or if I want to drop him and stream someone else but eventually, you can't find the next, I know he's not a first baseman, but you can't find the next Brent Rooker or something like that unless you start working through the options week to week. So I think
speculate on Matt Mervis.
right. So I think dropping Abreu is more of a just saying I'm done with Abreu. I don't think he's turning it around. I don't think it's a comment that like you think Santana will be better than Abreu from this point forward, which he could be, but because Santana's helped by the shift changes and does still have a bit of power and has stolen I think 3 bases by the way this year. I think it's 3 that he's stolen this year, which is wild.
Yeah.
But
You
yeah,
see
like
that in the minors sometimes, though, where these guys, they
yeah,
always used to run the minors, but then they get to the majors. They don't have the green light.
yeah,
Pitchers are better holding them on. Catchers' pop times are faster.
yeah.
Those first basemen with 8 stolen bases in the minors, all of a sudden it's 0 in the majors or 1 or 2. Speaking of 10-team leagues, though, or thinner leagues, Uncle Ted actually raises a really good question here. Is it worth having bench bats in a 10-team league or just keep 5 pitchers? Now, with the caveat that most of my leagues are not that thin. I only have one that's remotely close to that thin. I think it is worth in today's game to have that extra bench bat, especially because I think you stream hitters too. You look for good hitting matchups. You look for number of games. Maybe you have, unless you have like a at bats or game ceiling, like a limit to the number of games you can have in a given week. I think you should be, or for the season for that matter, you need to be thinking about that too. I think it's all, it's nice to have streaming options as pitchers, having that depth, playing the matchups and closers. But I don't know. I think it's also worth it to think about having this bench bats. Good question, Ted. What do you think, Fred?
If it's a 10-team league, a lot of 10-team leagues are daily transactions. So if you can make daily lineup moves, so if you can do daily lineup moves, I think out of those 5 bench spots, it's probably good to have 3 or 4 are pitchers because basically you can leave a bunch of good setup men in your lineup every day. You can get all of their innings, right? So, right now, you grab some good setup men, you put them in, you basically just rotate your starters. And that's what I do in friends and family. It's what a lot of people do in that league too. The starters basically just go in on their start day and come right back out.
Yeah.
But it's good to have, I think it's good to have at least one hitter, especially if you're an active manager who's willing to stream hitters in and out based on who's out of the lineup. You're going to have someone out of the lineup basically every day. And it's harder to stumble upon the next Jack Sawinski, the next Brent Rooker, if you're not streaming, if you don't keep that extra hitter. Like you kind of need that extra hitter spot. It gives you a better chance to stumble upon a really good hitter. And there have been some this year.
Yeah, there have.
Yeah.
There have. That's a good point.
Yeah.
We were talking about Jose Abreu earlier. What about Mauricio Dubon, excuse me. Big day last night. Had some harsh words for his former organization afterward, though he clarified today, not for his former teammates, but for the front office, because he basically, he was given away on the cheap by the Giants. Hitting .317. He's got 20 runs so far. He's been batting leadoff a lot lately. Only 6 RBI, no homers. Picked up his 3rd stolen base last year. Is there anything that he to build off of here, or is this just a nice stream while Jose Abreu is out?
So I think it's mostly just a nice stream. I find it interesting, like him having choice words for the Giants organization. So even with his success this year, his career OPS is 665. So like, oh, Giants, how dare you cut me?
Right.
With my career, probably going into this season, it was about 650 OPS. Like, how dare you guys let me go after that? It's cool. I guess he believes in himself and thinks maybe he's better than his numbers have indicated so far. Maybe he's in a situation where he thinks he never really got a fair shake there, never got to play every day, something like that. So one thing that's interesting about him is he's getting to hit leadoff right now while Chas McCormick is out. McCormick was hitting leadoff before he hit the IL. McCormick will be back either this weekend or early next week. McCormick didn't do anything to lose that leadoff spot. So I'll be interested to see what they do with that. And Dubon is a high-low guy, right, that I talk about sometimes where he's either hitting leadoff or like 8th or 9th. So if McCormick goes back to leadoff, Dubon goes down to 8th or 9th, then I don't think there's really any fantasy value. I guess if he's hitting leadoff, there's just the run scoring, the occasional stolen base kind of value. He's a 15 team. If he's hitting leadoff, he's in lineups in 15s, and he's probably like a streamer in 12s. If he goes back down to hitting 8th or 9th, then I think he's not a guy in 12s, and he's a streamer in 15s.
Yeah, that's the thing though. McCormick was barely there. He wasn't there very long. It wasn't like he can't lose a spot due to injury sort of thing. No. He was there for a few days. I mean, he was doing well in it, but it's not his necessarily. He was just renting.
No, it's true. But his OPS, so to put it in perspective, McCormick's OPS this year was 883.
Yeah.
At the time he went on the L. Even with Dubon having this heater, it's 746. So like there's probably pretty little debate that McCormick is a better offensive player than
I'd
Dubon.
agree with that.
Yeah. So, and you'd rather maximize his plate appearances. If I was the Astros manager when McCormick comes back, I think I'd put him back in leadoff and see where it goes. I mean, I know eventually Altuve comes back, but actually when Altuve comes back, if McCormick was hitting really well, you could leave him there and bat Altuve right behind him. The Astros have not been tearing it up offensively. That's the other thing, right? So productive Astros need to hit at the top of the lineup right now.
Yeah, I mean they're rostering some weird people in that lineup there. Like earlier, I was like the Jolks was on. I had Yoke on my face and Corey Jolks. He's hitting 295 still, but I was like, who is this guy? He's a 27-year-old making his debut. We saw Rylan Bannon on Sunday night get the automatic called strikeout against him there. He's 0 for 6 so far. He got a taste with the Orioles last year. But point being is they're really having to dig kind of deep. One of the issues with the Astros is that there's not a whole lot of help coming. They don't have too much in the minors that's ready to contribute.
That's right. And we see this boomerang effect with great teams in every sport, right? Like you ride high for a while, maybe you make some trades where you let go of some prospects, maybe some of those moves backfire on you in the long run, but they've been riding high as an organization. I know the whole cheating thing, whatever, but just as far as winning games and winning World Series and everything, they've been riding high for a while. And there's probably going to be some backlash here for them where they don't have the organizational depth. So I do really think there's a push from the players who are on their major league roster for the manager to figure out who are the best ones and get them to the top of the lineup. I don't think, how we would talk for the last couple of years about how Kyle Tucker needed to hit higher in the lineup, but their lineup was so good that it was hard you'd be like, come on. Like, for example, in 2021, Kyle Tucker had a 917 OPS. He mostly didn't crack the top 4 in the lineup. Like, that's ridiculous. But the lineup was so productive that you were like, okay, well, whatever. At least he's, their team's really good. They're winning. What can I say? This year, I think there's more onus on them to get the good bats at the top of the lineup. They're now more like a regular team. Maybe not quite as scary to stream against either. I haven't streamed on purpose, obviously, against them, but I've been a little more willing to use like mid-level starters against them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Sneakley now, all of a sudden, they have major problems in the rotation. Luis Garcia is the latest to leave with an elbow discomfort. Was placed on the IL today, right before the start of the podcast. So they're down him. They're down McCullers, obviously, and they're down Jose Urquidy, who struggled with the shoulder problem on Sunday and is on the IL. And it sounds like that one might be a while too. He's going to get a second opinion. Urquidy is on that shoulder. You never like seeing a shoulder injury anyhow. We're really not quite sure who's going to pick up the next set of starts. Brandon Bilak pitched in relief of Garcia yesterday. Forrest Whitley is not pitching great at AAA. They're going to go through a bunch of guys, and they didn't add any veteran depth. And you saw you saw Dusty Baker talking about how they didn't do that yesterday, and partly because they took a while to have the GM transition. Remember, they did the very rare not renew the contract of a GM that just won you a World Series thing, and
bold move,
very bold move, and nothing against the current GM. It's not his fault, but the fact is that lack of continuity probably hurt them a little bit this offseason.
Yeah, it definitely might have. When you look at their rotation, so they have an off day coming up on Thursday, so it's well timed for them. So they can start Hunter Brown today. They can start Valdez tomorrow. Framber Valdez tomorrow. They can start Christian Javier, on Friday. They don't really have a pitcher lined up for Saturday. Because of the off day, if they want to skip the 5th starter spot, they could go back to Brown on Sunday and then go from there. So that would save them. But right now on their depth chart, for example, on Fangraphs, they have 3 pitchers listed. Yep. Speaking of when we were talking about Tanner Bibee, bring this conversation all the way back at the start of spring training, say early draft season, January, February, you're like, everyone was like, well, Hunter Brown's really good, but will he be able to find a spot in the rotation?
Yeah, right.
Well, now he's their 3rd starter at worst. So, and it looks like that situation is not going to change. So that's another example of just go for skills, especially for starting pitchers, go for skills and let the roles sort themselves out over time. So, but yeah, this is an organization that has lost some depth. And as I said, in a lot of sports, we see this where teams are really good for a while. They make maybe some trades where they trade away prospects for veterans to help them win in the immediate future. And eventually that that slows them down, and maybe the Astros are starting to turn the corner there. Although we'll see. The Abreu move definitely hasn't worked out well, and that's really like they're missing a good cleanup hitter right now, and the Altuve injury. Those two things have really hurt their lineup. And then, yeah, the bad luck with injuries. They had a lot of really good luck in the starting rotation, I felt like in recent years.
They used
especially
8 starters last year.
That's
8.
right. Like that's amazing. So
yeah,
like I'm not saying they were like exactly they were due or they had this coming, but they kind of did. Like this just doesn't. We don't really see teams have healthy rotations year after year. So yeah, this was bound to happen probably sooner or later. Is Jose Urquidy, is he a drop? Let's say he's out for I don't know, 6 weeks.
Drop.
Yeah, I think so too.
I mean, especially because his performance wasn't that great even before the injury.
I know. It's just that starting pitching is hard to find, which is what we were talking about earlier with the young starters. So, and Urquidy still does have his career ERA is 3.85. His career WHIP's 1.13. That's pretty good. So, like if he was out,
you don't even know what sort of
3 weeks.
A, if he's going to come back on time, and B, if he's the same sort of pitcher when he comes back.
I know.
And there's nothing preventing you from picking him back up later on. Why carry that dead spot on your roster? If you're the one that's going out and bidding on Brandon Pfaadt, don't let Jose Urquidy stand in the way of that.
No, so it would more be if you drop him and someone else picks him up, obviously, and they're willing to stash him, and then down the road you wish you had him. I'm with you. I think he's in most cases a drop unless we find out. So I'll give you a comparable. Jamison Tyone's on the IL. I have him on a couple NFBC teams. I've held him because when he went on the IL, they said this will probably be like 15 days ish. Yeah. So, and he's throwing, and it looks like they're probably going to be right. He's going to be back in 20 days, something like that. So him, I held. If I heard Urquidy was 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I'd hold him. If I hear over a month, I'm out.
Basically, the month is the cutoff, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I think so too.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about one other hitter and then globally about hitters for a second here. Mm-hmm. Nick Senzel. This is taunting me, Fred.
I knew you wouldn't be able to resist when I put him in the notes.
I know. I resisted picking him up. I'm like, nah, we've all seen that before. Homered again yesterday. He's up to 3 homers, had the walk-off homer against the Rangers last week. I think he was the NL Player of the Week last week. Oh, this would slay me because I don't have him anywhere after carrying him all these other years. I mean, I want Senzel to do really well. I'm a Reds guy, right? But at the same time, Senzel has missed so many games because of injury, all these different various throwbacks. And he flat out wasn't good last year, despite 411 plate appearances. Wouldn't it be rich if this is the year he actually fulfills some of that promise?
It would be rich. Rich is a nice way to put it, for sure. It's interesting. The price on Senzel had gotten so low. Like where you could just grab him, like he's had some good weeks. You can just grab him off waivers still for a pretty low investment, under $50, whatever, over the last couple of weeks. I'm assuming he's been rostered now in most leagues, but this was the time it was almost worth it. For all the years where he got drafted in round 12 or something, just based on potential, something like that, in the teens for rounds, just based on potential. Now he's cheap. Now everyone's given up on him. So I took him in the Tout Wars draft and hold, and I don't even know what round. I'm going to say 45, something like that.
Did you use him last week?
I have not. I don't think I used him. I don't even know if I used him this week. Yeah. Like he's like right borderline. I might have put him in this week over Jake Fraley, but I'm not sure. I might have just stuck with Fraley because like they faced a lot of righties this week. So anyways, he's just right on the cusp, but I'm glad to have him. But that's where things had come down to with him. And the odds are so good that there'll still be another injury, but he still has the power speed combo that fantasy owners love. And if he was healthy, it's still easy to see a 15-15 season or something like that, which would be really not really valuable, but pretty valuable. 15-15 and maybe hits, I don't know, 250, 260. That would be pretty useful.
It would be. Senzel, though, I mean, he had a 390 OPS at the start of last week. So, I mean, fact is, he was so easy to pick up then, and now he's not easy to pick up.
That's right.
I kind of don't like that. The other problem, though, I mean, with ignoring him is he's going to pick up third base eligibility, and he's been playing a lot of third base. And that's pretty handy to have. I mean, he's batting 6th tonight against Michael Wacha. I mean, the other thing too is he feasted on the Rangers and the A's, so that's also something to keep in mind.
I agree. I almost feel like A's stats shouldn't count. I know they count in your standings, but when you're evaluating players, I'm getting close to the point where, like I said earlier, I'm streaming as many hitters as possible against the A's. I don't know if I actually put this plan into action, but I know in my waterfall this week I had a lot of JP Crawford just in there somewhere because the A's and the Mariners play.
Sure, why not?
And I was like, yeah, why not? Like if I can get him for $2 and I throw him in my lineup for 3 days, it maybe won't do anything, but chances are Seattle's going to score a bunch of runs. He'll probably be involved somehow. So we have to not go overboard on the A stats. The Texas stats are more legitimate, but plus your Reds were on a heater. Let's be honest. Like they swept the Rangers. They were on it. Like good for them. They were on a heater. They might not have a lot of heaters this year, but they're on one.
Right. Exactly. You asked for miracles. I give you the Rangers bullpen.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, I think with Senzel on the cheap, he's a smart ad. Once the price climbs, forget it. Because with the injury history,
here's a perfect example of the price climbing. If I fall for Senzel, am I dropping you Eugenio Suarez from? No, you are not. I am not. I mean, yes, you're getting stolen bases in multi positions. No, not even close for me. That's I would not do that. Not do that at all. Heart Foundation asks, better stash Carlos Encarnacion Strand or Matt Mervis? I say Mervis because I think he'll be up sooner. Keep in mind, Encarnacion Strand was hurt to start the minor league season. I understand the Reds present opportunities, but Votto's coming back at some point, theoretically. It'll be harder for Encarnacion Strand to break through, I think.
Does Votto finish his season on the Reds?
Yeah, because who's going to trade for him?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess he'd have to come up and hit a bit. If he hit a bit, maybe someone would put him on their bench for, like my Blue Jays.
Yeah, that's a sentiment.
I don't even think he can get on the. In all honesty, I don't even think he can get on the Blue Jays roster unless they just gave up on Brandon Belt at some point.
Well, do they give up on Brandon Belt at some point? He's not doing anything.
Terrible. Yeah, they pinch hit for him late in the game. That didn't work, but they did pinch it. But it was justified. He had struck out 3 times. So, yeah. Anyways, I don't know. That was just a random question. I don't know. I do think there's a scenario where Votto, if he could get his act together, get his act together a little bit, maybe because he's such a veteran presence and such a good story that maybe someone picks him up for the last couple months of the season, just as a bench bat. Anyways, I don't know, but to answer the question, I think I'm on the Mervis train too. I think, especially the Cubs look okay. I think they could see a reason to bring him up at some point. It's not like Eric Hosmer is really doing much. 2 home runs so far. He's being Eric Hosmer. So
exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. I think they could. I think that Mervis the guy would stash.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Globally, we've seen a lot of guys that were not expected to be our big hitters being the big hitters. As you mentioned in our outline, none of the top 5 and just 2 of the top 12 in OPS among the top among the top 130 picks. We're not talking about 5-game guys or anything like that, but
qualified hitters.
Yeah. So qualified hitters. So Brent Rooker, would he qualify? Does he have enough at bats right now?
He does not. So the pitchers who are in this, the hitters who are in this list, Matt Chapman obviously leads the majors right now.
Yeah.
Brandon Marsh, Sean Murphy. How about that as a catcher? On a heater. Luis Arias, Max Muncy. Then we've got Acuna, Lamont Wade, Yandy Diaz, Mike Trout, Jared Kelenic, Jonah Heim. 2 catchers in the top 11. James Outman. Yeah, James Outman. So those are the top 12 qualified hitters in OPS. And if I went a little further, I'd have Randy Rosarena, but after him, I'd have Cody Bellinger, Connor Joe, and Patrick Wisdom. So now I'm still at 3 of the top 16 who would have been top 130 picks in the main event. So I don't know if there's a takeaway from that other than just that it's early in the season.
Right.
Some of these guys probably have more staying power than others. Like Muncy, for example, we've seen some really good years out of him in the past. But I think the takeaway for me mostly is that it's really early in the season. I don't think the takeaway for me yet is that hitting is not predictable. I think it's just that we're really early in the season. But it's interesting. Like we do not see early round picks. Acuna, who went first overall in a lot of leagues. Other than him, Mike Trout, round 2 pick, Randy Rosarena, round 3 pick. That's it. That high in the top 16 in OPS, not fantasy value, OPS, which does translate other than steals to fantasy value often.
I think Jorge Mateo's super interesting there. Already has
Yep.
6 homers along with 10 stolen bases.
Yep.
You're like, maybe he'll
Best
have a
power
hot
speed combo so
batting
far.
average streak, but the power streak, 6 homers and
Yep.
5 doubles, 11 extra base hits and through end of April. I mean, that's pretty impressive. Brandon Marsh is the other, 15 extra base hits so far, 7 doubles, 4 triples, 4 homers so far.
Yeah, he's in I have a Yahoo trade article coming out tomorrow, and I'm pretty sure he's in it as a guy to market on the trade block to sell.
Yeah,
I
sure.
just think he's a classic sell high. He had some buzz in draft season, so he didn't come totally out of nowhere, but 464 BABIP so far. I just don't really see. He's made a little bit of improvements, like his strikeout rate's a little better and his walk rate's better. So like there's some
Right.
improvements there, but I don't know. I'm not. I think he's someone. This is more directed. I think in industry leagues or something. I don't know if you're gonna be able. I don't know. Actually, maybe you could get something for him. People liked him going into the season, so he's off to a great start. I think he's a sell high right now.
Well, I think so too.
Yeah.
Except I have him in like 6 NFBC leagues where I can't trade him.
Can't trade him. So now you just ride it out and cross your fingers that Fred's wrong and that he has a great year.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
All right, I talked about. I promised we'd talk a little closers right now.
Sure.
And you made the comment. There's not a whole lot of transition right now. We're not finding too many. Like there's the Cubs, kind of the Phillies with Alvarado. Alvarado could be the big score so far, but even then, Rob Thompson's not using like one closer. He's using multiple guys to close games.
Yeah, my thought on the closers was I feel like we have a bit of a closer comeback so far this season, where a lot of teams are letting one reliever get the bulk of their saves. Like as I scroll through this, because I was thinking the last couple weeks, I was like, there's not really much on the waiver wire for closers. You can get good relievers, but not closers. So I started looking at the closer list, and like we've already got Emmanuel Clase and Josh Hader already have 10 saves. David Bednar and Jordan Romano already have 9. We're about 30 games into the season. Like these guys are on like 50 something save paces. I know they're not going to stay there, but they're on high paces. And then as I started looking through it, and I thought, some teams that were supposed to have unsettled bullpens have settled on a guy a bit. Like Paul Sewald has 7 saves. Yohan Duran has 6 saves. Carlos Estevez is starting to look like the Angels closer. I think they wanted him to be their closer from the start of the year. He just stunk in spring training. So they couldn't go with him. David Robertson has 6 saves. I think Adam Ottavino has 3, but Robertson's got 2/3 right there of the saves. AJ Puck has started to emerge. He has 5 saves. I think off the top of my head that no one else on the Marlins has 2. So he started to emerge. So, and even some guys who like Alexis Diaz in Cincinnati, he just has 4 saves. Well, like that's more of an opportunity thing than a closer committee. As you scroll through the saves leaderboard, you don't find multiple relievers on one team. The Phillies do have Alvarado with 5, and so far Kimbrel with 3. But I'm not seeing teams where the second reliever has, say, 3 saves or something like that.
I think
so
the
far.
Mets are that one.
The Mets are the one. Yep. Other than that, I'm not really seeing it. And I, even like the Cubs have a messy save situation because they can't find a guy. Like Fulmer was supposed to be the guy, he stunk. Then they started to maybe think about Boxberger, and he wasn't great either when they gave him the opportunities.
Boxberger's not bad.
He's been okay. 9-6 strikeout to walks, not good. I feel like his worst performances were also like right as Fulmer had stunk and they were thinking about turning to him.
Sure.
Like he was bad at the wrong time. Timing is such a thing when you're trying to take over a closer's role. But I feel like there are fewer committees maybe than there were last year. And I don't know if this is going to be a sustainable thing, but like the teams who have committees right now, I feel like it's just because they don't, like the A's don't have a committee because they want a committee. They have a committee because their whole bullpen's awful.
Yeah.
So even the Tigers, I feel like Alex Lang is starting to emerge as their closer. He has 3 saves. Jason Foley has 2. I don't know. We'll see where that all goes.
I think it's Lang is first and Foley when Lang isn't available. I really think that. I think that's the way it's set up there.
I'm not saying that to be the closer you have to get 95% of your team's save chances. Like it's not 2000 anymore. But if we're talking about teams that give 70% or 75% of their save chances to one guy, that's a closer to me.
Yeah,
I think that there are more teams than there were last year who are going, like the Astros would give all their save chances to Ryan Presley if he could just be available for them. Like they have a closer. Like they don't. The fact he only has 3 saves is because of his own injuries.
Right.
And poorly timed injuries. But yeah, I think we're starting to see some teams actually go with a closer where there's real differentiation. Like I said, Yohan Duran has 6 saves, Jorge Lopez has 2.
Yep.
So if that continues, right? Like
Paul Sewald's got 7 now. It
he's got
helps
7.
that.
I know that Andres Munoz getting hurt like factors into that, but not really, because last year the Mariners were just dead set on having a committee right from the start of the year. This year, Sewald has 7 saves, Matt Brash has 1. And he got the 1. I believe that when he got the 1, it was in Toronto. He's Canadian. That was a big deal. And but Sewald was unavailable. I'm pretty sure when he got
Yep.
couldn't pitch that. I think it was in extra innings, right? And Sewald had already pitched. So like
Yep. I
we're
think
seeing
Texas is a point of inflection there. Jose
yeah,
Leclerc only has 1 save. Smith has 3.
yeah,
Leclerc's got 7 walks in 9 innings. Was really bad against the Reds last week, so that might change. The Yankees. Clay Holmes blew the save last night.
yeah,
Got a
yeah,
lot of boos in the process there. Now Clay Holmes is, he's got a 145 whip now. He's blown
yeah,
2 saves. He's got 4. But he's got 5 walks now in 9 2/3 innings. Those walks are a killer. You hate seeing your closer hunt and peck and can't not be able to find the strike zone. I actually had some like backup bids on like the likes of Michael King and
mhm,
Ian Hamilton is another guy on that in that bullpen that I kind of like. But at the same time, we're not sure if the Yankees just gave Holmes a little bit of a vote of confidence. That could be the dreaded kiss of death, but
yep.
it might just be that, okay, we're going to stay with him and he gets the next one too. So we'll see.
Yeah, yeah. King's been a better reliever than Holmes for sure this year. I understand the Yankees are going to give Holmes a chance to work all this out.
Yep.
The Yankees don't have a ton of room to play with like they've had in some other years. Like Tampa Bay's been awesome so far. The Jays look good. Baltimore's been playing great. Like the Yankees do need to keep pace if
Yeah.
they want to make the playoffs. And they have a lot of injuries. Their lineup
Yeah,
doesn't
I
look
know.
great right
They're in a
now.
really tough spot with Judge and Stanton out right now. And the young
Absolutely.
guys aren't hitting for them.
And rotation injuries. So if they can build a better bullpen in a different way, then they need to do it. But my point on the closers is like I feel like there are more teams trying to have a closer this year than there have been in the past couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something we have to adjust to in fantasy. Obviously, so having flux among closers, that's been around since before you and I started playing fantasy baseball, because there's always going to be pitchers who stink and
Right.
then they lose their closer job. Like that's been a thing forever. But the last couple of years that we felt like there was a lot of teams, Seattle, Tampa, etc., who weren't even trying to have a closer. Like the Reds, like their stated position was, even if a guy goes out and does a great job closing, we're going to use someone else the next time. So
Yep.
now I feel like we're seeing more teams. Even Arizona with Andrew Chafin has started to kind of separate.
Yeah.
I mean, teams more say, hey, if you go out and convert a save and you're pitching well, we'll go back to you like a closer. So I don't think they'll overwork them like they did 20 years ago. I don't think we're going to see 55 save guys, but I think we might see more 27 save guys, something like that, than maybe we saw the last couple of years. I'm interested to see where it all goes. I just feel I started looking through a closer chart when I was doing my fab bids, trying to look for speculative closers. And as I was going through it, what occurred to me is there was more teams than I felt like the last few years where the person was listed as like a secure in their role closer.
I think that's right. With the caveat that we probably will see a few more injuries
Yep.
that'll cause some chaos.
Yep.
A few more blown saves might as well. And we'll see what the effect of the new rules have on the closers health wise too. Hasn't hit them as badly. The injuries that we have had among closers all came kind of early, not necessarily as a result of the rules. Like Raisel Iglesias never made it to the opening bell. Obviously, what happened with the Mets. I mean, that happened in the WBC. So we've kind of got some other things that are working there. But the other thing we have to see is, the trade deadline. What changes happen then? Look, Bednar might not go, but someone else might go, and that'll also kind of create problems there. And then that's always kind of one of the things where you get some changes there here and there. Overuse is an issue too. We'll start to see some closers. They have the good problem of closing a lot of the games, and then they will go a week without pitching. We'll kind of play around with that. Let's close. And I think that's it among closers that I want to talk about. Oh, you mentioned the outline of the Braves. So Iglesias is going to finally come back this weekend.
Yeah, hopefully this weekend, early next week at the latest. AJ Minter to me is, Well, as soon as I see Iglesias get a save, I think AJ Minter is probably a drop. You know what? If I had roster room, maybe I'd want to see Iglesias pitch like 3 or 4 times, and then I drop Minter. So maybe I hold Minter. Let's say Iglesias let's say I hold Minter maybe through the end of next week, just to be, because again, the Braves, everyone was saying closer committee with Iglesias out. Not everyone, but people were speculating on that. Minter has 6 saves. He doesn't even pitch great. He's got 3 losses, but he's got 2 blown saves, but he has 6 saves. So they've gone with him as their closer. So I think for that, and Minter is a good pitcher. Like, he's got a 16-3 strikeout to walk. Like, I think he's better than what his ERA indicates. I think I would want to see Iglesias, like I said, like if Iglesias, let's say Iglesias comes back Friday or Saturday, I think I'd want to hold Minter through the next Sunday, like 9 days, and make sure.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Then I drop him.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
And I think I drop him because I think there's a difference here. I think so for years it was you had to have 2 closers, and then you messed around with trying to find a third. Then I feel like the last couple of years it was like, well, I think I could just get away with having 1, and then I'll mess around with trying to find a second, because there's so many saves that are being spread out. If we get back to more teams having a closer, then we obviously go back to I need 2 closers, and I see if I can mess around with having a third, because if more teams are having a closer, the save standings are going to climb up to higher numbers.
Yep, I think that's right.
Yeah.
So I think that's,
see where it goes. It's early. Right. Yeah.
Of course, the Uncle Ted brings up Shelby Miller in the comments again this week. He did get a save last week, 1 save, but then Brusdar Garrattarol got the save on Saturday. Phillips is still in the mix. I don't think we have resolution on this. I think it's going to be a committee of guys. Garrattarol was on the paternity list when Miller got his 1 save. So I don't think that's a change in roles. I think it's kind of I think Dave Roberts finally said, he wanted to hold out Phillips till the end of games. And he does have 3 saves so far, did get a save on Sunday, but he can't always hold Miller out. Phillips out, excuse me, because, Vesla has been terrible. Bickford hasn't been great. They've had injuries. They've had trouble getting games to the back end there. I think Gratterall is the guy that gets more saves among them, but I think they're going to add to that bullpen. I think that's the one team that trades. Like, I could see Aroldis Chapman going there.
Oh, that would be spicy. That would be fun. Yeah, I think this is one of the teams that right now is a committee, but I think the committee is more Gratterall and Phillips, like you said. Someone like Miller maybe just gets the odd one. Yeah, I think this is a team. I think the Dodgers maybe are a bit of a team that's looking for one of them to emerge, but I think the Dodgers are one of the few teams that are off of everything I just said. Like, as you noticed, when I named all these teams that were supposed to be committees, but it actually settled on a guy, I didn't name the Dodgers because I think they're one of the few that still haven't settled on a guy. And like you said, maybe they won't. Maybe they'll end up trading for someone. Aroldis Chapman would be really fun. There's probably some other ones. We could say Diaz from Cincinnati, for example. He's going to be in all kinds of trade rumors. If the Dodgers wanted to go with someone kind of younger, more controllable to have a long-term closer. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. But I think they'll need to add to their bullpen for sure.
Yeah.
And their rotation.
Gratterall was kind of the high leverage guy, so it's kind of noteworthy. Arenado had a horrible road trip, by the way. The Cardinals had a terrible road trip.
Yes.
We could go on and on about that. Yep. But
Brian Helsley, by the way, of closers who have not met expectations this year.
No,
Brian Helsley's
he hasn't.
3 blown saves out of 6. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that game-winning home run when he tried to get him on the road trip, where he tried to get a five-out save, but just couldn't get it done against the Giants. That was tough. His
velocity is still good. I would buy low on him before I would back out on him right now and trade him away. I think I would be more likely to buy low, but yeah, there's concern there. If he blows the next couple saves, he's probably getting a break from the closer's role.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
Yeah.
Alrighty, I think that wraps it up for today. What do you got cooking on your articles?
Yeah, I got a trade article with some buy low, sell high. Actually, they're not all buy low and sell high, but just some buys and some sells. Coming out tomorrow. I got a weekend primer to get us ready for all the weekend series coming out on Thursday. And one last thing I'll throw out from news from today that's great news: Liam Hendriks ready for a rehab assignment. Speaking of closers.
Yeah, so that's one bullpen situation that will be settled pretty soon.
That's right. So we could be looking at, whatever. He could have a decent rehab assignment of 10 days, 2 weeks, right? But maybe by the 3rd week in May, he's the White Sox closer again.
And the White Sox desperately need anything that's good news right now.
Absolutely,
so. Yeah. All righty. I want to thank Rival Fantasy for their sponsorship. Thank you guys for all the great comments in the forum there. Appreciate it there. Thanks everybody who's been listening all along. Fred and I will be back at you again next Tuesday. Take care.